Hello and welcome to the Skydog podcast, Horse Love, where I'm going to be talking with a whole variety of people about their love of horses. Come join us.
Take me where your river flows. I want to drive on your open road like the wilderness where we are born singing, whoa.
I am so excited to talk to you. I feel like I've been kind of calling this Blue Zeus's year because we have kind of so many exciting things happening for Blue Zeus. And I thought, what a perfect place to kick off a chat with you than to talk about your relationship with Blue Zeus in the wild, when you remember first seeing him, what that felt like, what it felt like going through the roundup. And then, I have so much thanks to you because you have been incredible helping us, showing videos of Blue Zeus, pictures of Blue Zeus when he was wild, and reminding everyone to keep fighting for our wild horses. So I thought we'd start first with Blue Zeus and his family, and you talk about your experience and love for him.
Okay, great. Chad and I were out in the field. It was about 7 years ago, and we'd gone out lots of times, seen lots of horses, and all of a sudden I was by myself. Chad was somewhere else. I could see him, but here comes this horse that I thought, holy, who is that? So he came towards me, and you know how he is, and I kind of lost it. I pretty much stopped breathing, and I crouched in the sage because I just was so stunned. And so here he comes sauntering up very gently and casually, but very curious. And he came up, and I'm in the sage, not breathing. And he just stared at me and had that meeting of the minds. And I didn't know what to do. It was just such a wonderful thing to see this big, giant, gentle giant, who had knee socks up, white knee socks. And it was just looked like, Chad and I named him Blackjack at the very beginning because he had this aura and this look about him that he was like a Johnny Depp pirate or something, just like different than any other horse I've ever seen. So anyway, he came in and we sat there staring at each other for the longest time. And then it was like his family started coming in one at a time. He would give them the nod, like, go ahead, everybody. Parade past her, she's fine, whatever this thing is. Chad thinks that the horses think we're big birds. And so they one by one came by and looked at me, and one by one I just got, and I'm filming this, and then then all the kids and everybody go by, and a couple of his mares, and then at one point, no horses went by anymore, and it was just Blue Zeus staring at me. And I thought, wow. And then all of a sudden, here comes Iris tearing through and basically stopping in front of my camera and her mane. And she was like, who is that? So then she went on, and then Blue Zeus came in. And they all just stood there and stared at me. And I was just like speechless. And I was kind of trying to find Chad, like, get over here. You won't even believe what is in front of me, And then he finally came in, and we spent, I think, probably 45 more minutes while they just kind of did their own thing. They stayed and then they meandered away and we watched them go away. And that was our first meeting with Blue Zeus.
It's so incredible hearing that because I can't even remember the first time I ever saw Blue Zeus on a video or a photograph, but I know that I followed you and two or three other photographers, and he would pop up every so often. And I would just exactly the same. I would play the video over and over again and just stare at him. And, I say to people sometimes in life, I've met a lot of rock stars, a lot of movie stars, a lot of people that maybe others would be in awe of. I'm not sure I've never had a thrill that equaled seeing Blue Zeus in the wild on your videos, on photographs. He just, and I had a real kind of thing about not following pages to do with an HMA, because really I didn't want my heart to be broken. I didn't want to know them in the wild and fall in love with them and then watch them lose their freedom. It was something that was like too much for my heart. I've still never been to a roundup. I have never been out. I mean, apart from a couple of times I went out with Laura Lee in Nevada, I've never gone out to see the real horses I love. And I know that I've talked to you about, if ever I am going to, I'm going to do it with you. But it was,
Yeah.
that extraordinary, I don't know what it was, because I've seen a lot of different pictures and different videos of other horses, but he just became my heart horse. And I would always put a little heart underneath. And I was very aware I didn't want to comment too much because I didn't want to put a target on his back, because often I didn't want people to know that I loved him, because I wanted to keep him safe. And I always had this thought in my mind: as long as Blue Zeus and his family are wild and free, then we have something to fight for. He still was out there living a wild life, out on the range. And so I guess when I first found out about the possibility of his herd being rounded up in that area and them targeting the Red Desert, but then also kind of hearing rumbles about the fact that they were almost going to target him because he lived in an area that really wasn't part of the HMA. And I just couldn't even imagine him losing his freedom. And I know that you were at that roundup, and I know that I always say this to people that follow those herds and go out and photograph herds or know the horses well. It's way more painful for those people than it is for me usually, but Blue Zeus hit me harder. But I can't even imagine how hard that must have been for you, seeing so many horses you loved rounded up during the Red Desert Roundup. It was the biggest roundup at that point by the BLM.
Right. They targeted him and his family. Well, from what I understand, they wanted to get him because he's so beloved, and that's really a shame. They're so cruel, about that.
I think the BLM, oftentimes I have experienced revenge or retribution on an advocate or an organization using the horses to hurt them. And I've definitely experienced that, from trying to get a horse and the BLM going out of their way to make that horse unavailable to us, or deliberately then putting them up on the internet adoption because they knew that we wanted to reunite a family. So from the day that I knew that Blue Zeus had been rounded up, I told anyone, like, do not say that I want to try and get him and his family. Like, we cannot mention it to anyone. Take down pictures of Blue Zeus. Like, we want to do it as under the radar as we possibly can. And, then began.
I remember that being really hush hush. We all went out of our way to not even mention his name or that he was anything special,
Exactly.
But the corrals where they send the horses, this, and it just infuriates Chad and I that they do not believe in families, and they will not allow you, because you're a sanctuary, to even look at the pictures on their website. They'll take you down.
Yeah.
And it says that at the very, very beginning. If you are a sanctuary, kindly leave this page.
Yeah.
You knew that, right? Yeah.
I'm very aware that there is hostility out there. I was talking just now to Shannon Pfeiffer, who I also am having on the podcast. And, I was very aware with that, with the South Steens pages, they're very pro BLM, which on the flip side of that is anti-sanctuary. And one of the biggest narratives that the BLM had was that these horses are just livestock. They are a number. They are supposed to be adopted to do a job and be ridden and used for a purpose. And they absolutely would never go along with the narrative that these families had bonds, that they deeply loved their children, that they were, we've got one family, the Pine Nut family, that are 4 generations, from the 28-year-old old mama, her daughter Apple, her daughter Dumpling, and then her son Sam. That's 4 generations. Right. And when they would get stolen by another stallion, they would all go. Like, old mama didn't stay with the stallion she loved. She went with her children because she loved them. And I think it's one of the things I'm the most proud of is that, starting with Goliath and Red Lady and Bodie and then bringing Ember back, we have continually beaten this drum and showed evidence that these families exist on the range, that they love each other, that we work really hard to reunite as many as we can, which is a difficult job because obviously you have to have pictures of them on the range, or at the very least that one family band being rounded up together to be able to reunite them. And they have to be distinctive looking, because when you go to a corrals of 3,000 horses and you're looking for 2 bays and a black horse and a brown horse without very distinctive markings, you're not going to find them, which is why Blue Zeus, on top of the fact that I had such a love for him, I also, every single member of his family was very distinctive. We had a dapple gray, we had Nike with her swoosh, we had Gaia, the fiery redhead, we had the children. We obviously didn't know about the babies that had been born in the corrals. But that unbelievable moment when we had gone through pen after pen after pen, and I was with Steve Leonard, who's the head of that corrals, and suddenly I saw a small group break away because the whole herd were moving as one from one end of the pen to the other. Every time you would go near them, they'd all run to the other end. And suddenly this one group, and I was like, that's them. I saw the swoosh. I was yelling, the swoosh, because she didn't have a name then. And then I was like, she's with a red horse. She's with a gray horse. She's with the, Flora and Juno were babies when they were rounded up. And it was, honestly, I don't know how I didn't collapse. It was just this extraordinary thought that how can you deny this? This family have stayed together through the roundup, through holding, through processing, and they're still in a pen together, which would never happen normally. If it hadn't have been for the pandemic, if it hadn't have been for the shutdown and the fact that they couldn't be sorted and sent to other facilities, they couldn't be put on the internet adoption. So we had that one chance, but the support that you gave us and the love that you've showed us ever since for taking him and his family has been absolutely mind-blowing. And I'm absolutely thrilled. We're nearly at the end of this process of the Blue Zeus movie that you and Chad feature in enormously, talking about your relationship with Blue Zeus and his family in the wild, and Chad's immense knowledge of the Red Desert and the horses on it. And you guys don't just go out there and take, not that that's a small thing, but you don't just go out there and take pictures and video. Chad has an extraordinary, he has written a book, which I used snippets of that book in our beautiful coffee table book There's Chad's work
Awesome.
all through that at the beginning of chapters. We've used snippets from him, from Deanne Stillman, from Dave Phillips, who all three of you write so beautifully about Mustangs and so poetically and just absolutely the most incredible. I think I have good descriptive language, but Chad shames me in that respect. And also his book,
Mm.
is it A Land of Awe? Is it the
In
title?
a land of
In a land
awe.
of awe. Yeah, I said a land of awe,
Uh-huh.
but I knew there was a word at the beginning of that. So if anyone that's watching
Yeah.
hasn't read Chad's book In a Land of Awe, please do, because it really focuses a lot on the horses of the Red Desert and also the amazing history of the Mustangs in America. But I wanted you to talk a little about what Chad does in terms of like teaching students and taking them out to the.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that program?
Sure, yeah. He does an amazing job advocating for the wild horses of Wyoming, particularly. For the past few years now, he has 2 or 3 classes in the summer where he takes students out. I think there's 10 students per trip. We don't want a lot of people out there at once. But he takes these people out there and spends the day with them, and they eat lunch out there and, answers questions and sees people out there, photographing and getting down on their knees and praying to these wild horses.
Wow.
So he sees a lot, and it changes them because Wyomingites, there are still people that live here that don't know that there are wild horses in Wyoming. So he takes 3 classes out. He'll be taking a class out this coming summer. He's going to do an overnight in Cody to see the McCullough Peaks. And he'll do 2 out here in the Red Desert. And yeah, he's just so knowledgeable, and he does his homework, and he's got a lot of dignity, that guy, and he's got so much smarts, and he really, really works hard at making sure that the classes are to a T what he wants them to be and what he wants people to know about the horses. And he changes their lives. I mean, people write letters to him all the time. It's crazy how much he's like a celebrity here.
Well, he is a celebrity.
Yeah.
You both are, and the knowledge that you have shared with me and what I've learned from following your social media, which is Wild Horses, Wild Places, is unbelievable.
Uh-huh.
The photographs that you post, the videos of the horses out there, and it really moves me every time, and I still, even though Blue Zeus and his family were rounded up, I still believe, especially with, the proposed wiping out of some of those Wyoming herds, and I feel like our sanctuary
Yeah.
absolutely built on the very first reunion we did of Goliath and Red Lady. That really brought so many people to us, and that film has been seen by so many people. So, I have a debt of gratitude for them for basically making us who we are. So Wyoming horses have such a special place in my heart. I think we actually have more Wyoming horses than from one herd in Oregon. So we probably overall have more Oregon horses because I do focus a lot on the Oregon herds because they're the closest. But in terms of, Salt Wells Creek, we have more horses from that herd than any. And the same with the Red Desert Complex and Adobe Town and Green Mountain. And, these are names that are magical places to me because those are the horses that, I try not to have favorites, but they definitely are not just favorites of ours that we focus on a lot, but people ask for them the most. People really love ballerinas, they love, and South Steen's horses are incredibly beautiful too, but I think there's something about the wildness, and especially when we came to get Blue Zeus, we also took, I think in the end, we had rescued 24 red desert horses at the end of that year. We sent 2 to Anglican,
Wow.
2 old boys. We brought a lot of seniors to us, and we had found some at the adoption event with Blue Zeus, but they had one more adoption event, and we went to it specifically to look at the other senior boys because we just wanted to take more because they had become so special to everyone. And we took Gandalf and Frostmoon and King and Joker, and it was honestly one of the hardest things I think I've ever done is stand in that pen of those senior boys and know that this was the last lifeline they had before they shipped to long-term holding. And I actually believe a lot of them were euthanized and didn't even make it to long-term holding. And it killed me because I asked again and again and again to Steve Leonard, to the adoption staff, to the wrangler that I knew there, if I could come back. And I said, honestly, I don't care what they look like. You could put 4 in a trailer, because they were like, oh, we're shut down. Oh, the COVID. And I was like, yeah, but there's no less contact a thing than we back up a trailer and you load 4 horses on. We just want to try and 4 more out. And unfortunately, we weren't allowed. And the next time I was told they had all shipped or been euthanized. And so it really broke my heart, because even now, you know, people ask to see those horses the most. And there is something so special about the Wyoming horses, which is why my heart is so with you and Chad, and, you know, what you guys do to advocate for them and to constantly show them and document them. And, you know, because we couldn't have found them without people like you that had images of his family, that had video and photographs. And I remember right when we were taking Blue Zeus, we put up a banner on our Facebook that was a picture. I don't know if you or Chad took it, but it was Blue Zeus lined up with his family. And that was like, I just kept my focus on it, like that we're going to get that family back. And so thank you for that. And so
well, you know, the Wyoming horses are special in the reason there's not a big city around here, you know, like Salt Lake City, where they go see the Anarchy. They don't get a lot of attention, you know. There's like a handful of people that go see the Wyoming wild horses. So that's why they're so special, because they're so wild. And, you know, it takes a lot for them to become trusting. And it takes a lot of work. It takes years of work to get them to be letting you in. And then, you know, they let you in. And then a couple of years later, you know, then they're gone. So it's just, Wyoming horses are special. And, yeah, we're so grateful that you love them too, and that you take them.
Well, I love them. And how originally did you and Chad find the red desert horses, start taking photographs and videos of them, and then turn that into the amount of advocacy you guys do?
Yeah, we lived here. We moved here from Arizona, and Chad started teaching. And we lived here for 10 years before we knew there were wild horses here. And we do a lot of camping, and Chad fly fished, and we traveled all over. And of course, it's the big secret. There are no wild horses here, as far as no signage, no anything. So you don't know if you're standing on BLM land with wild horse herds, you know. And that's what we're actually, our next step is to put some signs all around all the herd areas, so that people can, on their way to Yellowstone, can go, oh, let's go see those wild horses. There's a sign right there, you know, get people to fall in love with them, so that we can continue to save them. But anyway, we were going camping, and a storm moved in and moved us to another part of where we wanted to go camping. And there were a bunch of horses hanging around this meadow, and we just wanted to go take pictures of them. But then these horses were really different. And we didn't know we were on BLM land. And they just started circling us and freaking out that we were there. And I was scared. And Chad's like, oh, so we just kind of huddled and watched them and took some pictures. And then we found out by Chad looking at a map that we were on BLM land and they must be wild horses. And that once you have that experience and your heart, your adrenaline, and all of that, fly fishing doesn't matter anymore. Even going seeing moose in Yellowstone and bears, you can have it. You know, if you want to, if you can spend a day watching and observing the families of wild horses, it's like nothing in the whole world. So every single weekend from that day on till now, 23 years later, you know, we go see horses. We went to see horses yesterday and in a snow blizzard. We had to do it. You know, it's just something that you have to do. I get really depressed when I'm at home if I don't get to go see horses. So anyway, we discovered that and thought, okay, those are wild horses and we'll go do that from now on. And it just gets in your blood. And then Chad decided we need to get a group going because we learned about how they're not loved here, you know? So we've got a great group of locals, you know, in Casper. There's lots and lots of people who love the wild horses now. And, you know, it just continues to develop and spread out. And yeah, we're going to have that movie here. It's going to be great. I can't wait.
I can't wait either. And it's funny because that was very much my first intention when I started the sanctuary. I wanted to keep telling their stories, whether it be the stories of where we found them, where they ended up, or whether it was the story of their herd in the wild. I was like, you know, it was kind of like the Native Americans passed down these stories. And I was like, all I can do is keep telling their stories and try and get more people to fall in love with them. And that's always been such a core goal of what we've done with our social media, with like writing their stories, with showing photographs and videos of them. It's just to get more people to fall in love with them, to get them to care so that they have an emotional bond to these horses, because then they will take an action based on that. So, you know, it's fun to hear you say that was your goal too. And it's funny because you would think that the red desert horses are the only bond that we have, but there is another horse at Skydog that is as a direct result of you helping us, which was Honor. And that was an extraordinary thing because somebody, and I can't remember who, sent me, oh, I know who it was. It was my friend Jamie. She sent me a set of photographs of a wild horse being pushed into a trap with their family, but this one horse stopped and then the wranglers went out and she collapsed 3 or 4 times. They roped her and basically brought her in. She kept trying to escape. And the pictures were so powerful. And I was, they were like, oh, this horse is on the internet adoption. And I said, well, who took these pictures? Because it was so unusual to see a set of photographs like that, but with no watermark, with nobody's name attached. And I thought, well, it's Wyoming. I'm going to text Lynn Hanson and see if she knows who took those pictures. And you absolutely did. And you gave me her name, and she hadn't wanted to be associated. Some people are sort of scared, or not scared, but worried about annoying the BLM and then not being allowed horses. So I think she hadn't put her name on them. But when I asked her, you know, would I be able to use these pictures if we take this mare? She's on the internet adoption. She was so 100% behind it and said, you know what, when she was being roped, she was so defiant and she fought so hard for her freedom. Why they couldn't have let that one horse go, like why they have to be so obsessed with their, you know, they get paid by the horse. They're going to run that horse down. They're going to drag that horse in. And, you know, she said that there was one point where this horse looked her right in the she obviously had a big lens, but
uh,
her, but she felt
yeah.
Honor looked right at her. And she said, the fact that my photographs are going to help her get to Skydog and live out her life, without any more stress. And so that wouldn't have happened without you telling me who that was and me messaging Otilia, who was so kind to let us use them. And Otilia had actually taken a lot of pictures of Goliath and Red Lady out in Salt Wells Creek. And so she was someone I
Yeah.
knew vaguely, and we had gone backwards and forwards over other things. But yeah, it was incredibly kind of her to let us use her pictures. Whenever I post on her, she always likes the post because, that's real advocacy. And, I know there are photographers who maybe have separate agendas in terms of like wanting to sell pictures or have a proprietorial hold over a horse that they know from the wild. But I'm like, but ultimately, if you can help that horse land softly in a sanctuary, then surely that is, the best outcome for them and the best use of your pictures, that they would be used for the actual saving the life of a horse and giving it a better life. So I'm really grateful to you. I don't know if you saw those pictures of Honor at the time and remembered them.
I do. I remember that. I know Otelia. I've met her before, and she's a sweet, lovely woman and loves the horses so much. But I do remember those pictures, and I remember that she didn't want to be known that she took them because she lived there at the time, and we're in Rock Springs, and I think she was looking to adopt some other horses and didn't want to have her name, be bad or anything. But yeah, and then I went to that BLM tour at Wheatland, and the tour bus actually stopped,
Yes.
they stopped right at her pen. And it was in a school bus, and I had my window down and my camera out, and the BLM employee who was doing the talking, he said, "Oh, I have a story for you. See this mare right here with the beautiful flaxen mane right there?" And they were all in a line eating hay off the ground in a line, and she was the first one there. And he just made it a point to say she did not want to be rounded up. She wouldn't go into the pen. They had to rope her, and he told the story to the
Wow.
busload of tourists, like, "Woo, look, we got her." And I was just like blown away that he made a story out of that. I don't know why he did that, but I knew what he was talking about.
It's
But
funny that you say that because when we went through, we had a very hostile relationship with the BLM at Burns for a while because they had actually asked us to take a horse, Elsa, and her two twins, because she had had twins at the corral after being rounded up. One of them was much more poorly and sickly, and it's a miracle for a horse to carry twins, let alone have them without any vet help and for them to survive. So the adoption staff had asked us to take them, and then when Rob Sharp, the facility manager, found out, he then said we couldn't take them and that Elsa was going to be part of the space study and the babies were going to go on the internet adoption. And we started a campaign, Free the Twins, basically just because it was so ludicrous. It's like, why do you need her for a space study? You have 750 horses, pick another. She's a bay mare. She isn't an Appaloosa or a roan, which that herd is famous for. It just seemed to me they
yeah,
said it out of spite. And in the end, it was very funny. Two other ladies bid on the twins separately, and knowing they were the twins, and then asked us to take them. But one lady bid on one. The other lady, when she went to pick them up, the wrangler was so full of himself, and he was like, "Oh, this is one of the famous twins that someone wanted, and you're getting one of the twins." And they couldn't keep their mouths shut. And so the woman is like, "Well, I don't want to take one of the twins." and immediately contacted us and said, I had no idea that this was one of the twins and we would like you to take them. But it's so funny that the BLM seems so, they're so proud of themselves when they get on these pages for doing a terrible thing, which they then translate into doing amazing thing. Like, yeah, we got this mare, we had to drag her in. And, it's like, why would you tell that story? But I had completely forgotten that part of the story, Lynn, that when I texted
Yeah,
her, that you then sent me a picture of her when you had got, because I was going to go to Wheatland and then something came up. I was going
right.
to meet you there. And the fact that you had a picture of Honor, I was like, well, talk about, I often feel when I'm just starting to look into a horse, everything conspires to say, yes, this horse needs to come to you.
Yeah,
You had a
yeah,
picture.
it's very serendipitous.
Very, very. And the other thing I wanted to say is, in terms of wild horse photographers and the debt that we owe them for obviously having pictures, Pat Doak actually and Beverly Schaefer both had taken a lot of, no, Barbara Wheeler, not Beverly Schaefer. Barbara Wheeler gave us some video that she had of Goliath out in the wild. And Pat Doak gave us some pictures. And that really helped us, and it's been amazing over the years to have that cooperation with certain photographers who have let us use their pictures. Steve Page from American Wild Horse Campaign, he took the picture of Phoenix jumping out, and he
Yes,
took pictures of Blue Zeus being rounded up. So again, these people have
yeah.
so much, but I really want to stress as well to all our followers, it is not easy. You are out walking, hiking for miles up and down mountains on rugged ground in all weathers to get these pictures. And so you really do
Yeah.
deserve a lot of credit. It's not like, oh, I took a picture on my phone of this family. It's like the work and effort and time and skill that goes into getting those pictures is extraordinary. So we are incredibly grateful because really Blue Zeus owes a lot to you. And for you to be a part of the film has been amazing. It just, gave that insight from someone who knew him on the range, and Chad's insight of like watching that get rounded up. It's a really powerful and a really emotionally moving part of the film that I can't wait for people to see it and understand how
Oh,
came together. I know you're on the edge of your seat. It should be locked by the end of this month, by the end of January. So hopefully it'll start doing the festivals then, and we'll be able to have screenings and people will be able to see it. And I hope that it really makes a big difference for wild horses and brings the change that's necessary, because the more people that understand the issues and the more people that are outraged by this government sanctioned animal abuse, which is basically what I call it, the more people can raise their voices and shout louder to protect these horses and have them treated in the way that they should be treated, preferably left on the range. And how, after decades of mismanagement, the BLM is still using the same old tool of roundups and holding. That's the solution. Oh, well, now we'll pay people
yeah.
to take them away. So, because we can't kill them, we'll, have a subsidy to pay to slay program. So this year we are, we're focusing on kill pen horses. We're focusing back on the SAFE Act. We're focusing back on defunding the AIP program, which is landing so many more Mustangs, many from Wyoming, in the kill pens and in the slaughter pipeline. So I'm really grateful to you for coming on, for talking about our boy. I call him our boy because we love him equally. And
Yeah.
that this is the year that you and Chad will get out to Skydog. I know that you guys
Yes.
going out and seeing the wild horses, but at some point I would love you to sit in a sage bush and for Blue Zeus to see you again and see, oh, there are those big birds we used to see out on the range.
Yeah, we would be honored and we can't wait, and we plan on doing that.
Perfect.
Definitely.
I
And I
can't
can't
wait.
wait for the movie.
Yep.
The movie's going to be a game changer.
I believe that too. And, I know I've talked about this movie for the last 4 months occasionally, and people are like, is this movie ever going to happen? It is happening.
Yeah,
It is,
yeah,
they actually went back out and filmed some roundups recently. So, that's a big part of the movie too. And all the different stakeholders from the BLM to the helicopter pilots to everyone, the Wyoming Stock Growers Association. There are so many people in that movie that have a voice and that really do show without a shadow of a doubt that these horses in Wyoming particularly, but in every state, are being treated and mismanaged to such an outrageous point that it's time for us all to unite and stand up against them, and all of the advocacy groups and the people involved in wild horses to put their differences aside and come together, to have one
yeah.
voice for these wild horses. And I hope this film does a lot to bring that together, and the people making it are, they've worked really, really hard to make a good film. So hopefully not too long, and I hope to see you in 2024, the year of your boy Zeus. So I look forward to it. And please say thanks to Chad too for all the advocacy that he does with you.
I definitely will, Claire.
Thank you, Lynn.
Okay, thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. See you soon.